Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones, and this is another one of my Living Consciously videos. My goal is to expand your paradigm, expand the limitations that you may have been raised with, born into, continue to, let's say, push up against now, and because you recognize that nothing feels the same. Nothing feels like it was before. So I offer these as a public service to everyone who is willing to listen to something that they um, may feel that slightly pushes up against their paradigm, against what they had been raised with, against what they are now learning, but somehow or other rings of truth for them. I know that when I was in my 3D uh, mode of just earning a living through selling real estate, I really didn't have time for spiritual work. I didn't have time for spiritual studies, but I also knew how important it was. So I really do have now a sense that this is where I am to spend the energies for the rest of my life. This is where I know that I have to focus my energies on. And today's video is on rocks that move. And I certainly hope that the people who find this video afterwards, because there's a lot of people that will maybe not come on while it's live, but will find it afterwards. And just really give a um, a thought to this and think of what has happened in their life that they couldn't explain. As I always do, I teach from my own experience, and in this case, the the rocks that moved were rocks that I saw on the side of a bike path. And I live in the just below Burke Lake in the Fairfax County area. And fortunately, we have this magnificent bike path that is right next to it. And we, as we traveled through it, the gal who was working for me and I, every single day, would take a minimum of a half-hour walk because I had a very rambunctious corgi at the time that absolutely needed his walk. So as we were walking down the bike path before we connected to the regular path, I witnessed two rocks that every single day moved about a quarter of an inch. So it was almost imperceptible because they moved at a place that was so teeny tiny that they couldn't that you couldn't really tell they were moving. And I know that when I looked at them, and it was maybe 5 or 6 days of us doing the bike path before I said anything to her. And when I spoke the words, I spoke her name, and then I said, the rocks, and pointed to them. And she goes, "You noticed." And because she too had been watching as the rocks were moving closer to us. They were at a distance of about 8 or 9 feet away. And so they were kind of tucked into the forest. It was very obvious, evident they were tucked into the forest. But as they moved closer, they we both watched them, but neither of us wanted to say anything to each other. And then when it just became too obvious, then we both agreed that we had watched those rocks move, like I said, about a quarter of an inch a day. They moved from a distance of about 8 or 9 feet to within 8 or 9 inches of the edge of our path. So from 8 or 9 feet away, approximately a quarter inch a day, those rocks moved about 1/4 inch to get to clear that distance of 8 or 9 feet. And then when they came to within 8 or 9 inches of the edge, all of a sudden both rocks disappeared, just were gone. And I looked for them on the side, they weren't there. I looked for them in the distance, they weren't there. One of the rocks appeared next to us and moved back and then disappeared, and the other rock never showed up. So quite intriguing to see that. But by that time that had happened, because we were watching them move a quarter inch every day, we kind of like gauged them against this branch, this tree, this leaf. And so we kind of knew what to look for. Maybe at the end of every week, we kind of knew the direction that they were coming at. And fortunately, I was able to find at the same time this was happening, I was able to find a National Geographic article. I just went looking for it this morning and I couldn't locate it. I guess you have to sign up to be a part of National Geographic, which I'm not willing to do because I just don't want to be bombarded with more ads. Um, but there was an article in Nat Geo that the title was The Gobi Desert Rocks That Move. And the gal who had photographed the rocks called one of them Speedy Gonzalez because he had moved like 268 feet in the night. He left a trail, a winding trail of about 268 feet. And so, like I said, I went looking for that article. I've read it, I've seen it in the past. I know wherever I took down the information, obviously I can't find it now, but I will. I'll be able to find it at some point in the future. And when I went looking for the information today, interestingly enough, what I saw was the mystery of slithering stones in Death Valley. Apparently, they had boulders up to 600 pounds that would leave marks, and they didn't know um, how or why those boulders were moving. And so the people who set up the photography equipment there claimed that they had what they witnessed. And of course, Death Valley is one of the hottest and driest places on the planet, certainly in the United States, but also at night it becomes very cold. And I know the temperatures dropped to 40 degrees, but they claimed, the two photographers that had set up camera equipment claimed that ice had formed, and a very thin layer of ice then allowed the rocks to move. Um, that's totally plausible, but I still it still seems a little bit weird that ice would be there and not have any kind of uh, like movement still needs to be um, uh, like, let's say if it's a flat level terrain, there's not going to be any movement with some kind of force pushing that stone or it walking away, moving on of its own volition. And the so I feel, yes, if there's a downward trend, a downward incline to the terrain, it could possibly move. But what about the ones that were level? None of that was mentioned. So that was kind of interesting to see that. But the other example that I wanted to show you was this was a crystal that I purchased. This was one of my very first uh, labradorite crystals, and it's not really showing. It's beautiful crystalline. There it goes. Pattern doesn't really show up, but then you can see some of the light on the YouTube. You can't see it on the Facebook, but you can see some of the blue light that emits from this crystal. I had this for a number of years, and all of a sudden, it disappeared for me. And because it disappeared, I looked for it and I knew no one had been in the house. This is after my children were both gone. Um, they had left for college, and absolutely no one had been in the home and had taken this, and this always lived on my end table in the living room. And so for about 10 years, this piece of labradorite was missing. And about 3 years ago, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years ago, I'm standing in my bedroom closet. I'm looking at the top shelf so that I only see this part of it. I only see the edge of it because it's at eye level with me. And as I look at it, I go and pull it forward, and it is this piece of crystal. Because I had it as long as I did, I knew it was the identical crystal. So it had dematerialized and then rematerialized in my home. And shortly after it dematerialized, since it was gone for 10 years, I at that point I had been working at a store in Front Royal, and the I asked the owner of the store because he had hundreds and hundreds of crystals that he was selling, and I asked him. I said, "Can crystals disappear of their own volition?" And he said, "Absolutely. They absolutely can. They make up their mind when and if they want to go." So my crystal was taken away, decided to leave, but also decided to come back. And every crystal that's in my house knows before I buy it, that it's a teaching stone. So I think it just wanted to be used every once in a while. This will also make you laugh. This piece of labradorite, when I first purchased it, I looked at it because, again, I got this from Jerry's store, and I looked at it and I loved the light that came from it. It wasn't big, it wasn't that enormous, but I just loved the iridescence that was in this stone. So I talked to it and I made it promise, and I said, if you're going to leave me, I'm not going to buy you because first of all, it was like $78. I felt it was too expensive. And secondly, I didn't want to buy something that was just going to leave. And so I heard its promise that it would stay. And so I bought it, and true to its word, it has never left me. And so I'm very, very grateful about that. The other crystal, of course, it's gone now, so I can't show it to you. But as I was digging in my garden when I was expanding my flower bed in the central island, in the central part of my lawn, I dug up the most exquisite heart-shaped crystal that was fairly large, about this large, the what my fingertips are showing, and it was a peach quartz. And I scrubbed it, and it just glistened and shined, and put it in the window, and was just so grateful to have it. And then started to grow orchids. And in front of the window that I put the etagere where my orchids were blooming, all of a sudden, one day I noticed the crystal that had been there, the peach quartz, was missing. And of course, don't have a clue where that is, where it has gone, but really was very, very disheartened because, like I said, that came from my own garden. So I hope it just returned itself to my garden if that's where it decided to leave. But I do encourage you to pay attention to what is happening in your life with the natural world. Do you see lights in your periphery vision, in the area that's right at the edge of your vision? Most of the time, those are fairies. So can you talk to stones? Of course you can. You can communicate with anything. Everything has consciousness. I know this has nothing to do with stones or rocks that move, but the last bit of information I wanted to share with you was the fact that we had 3 horseflies in our home, and unfortunately, my husband killed one of them. There's one still left, and one of them I caught its awareness, and I told it to land on me. This was the second time that I was communicating with a horsefly, and I told it to land on my arm, which it did, like right between my arm and my hand, and that I would free it, that I would walk it outside, which I did. So we have one more, and I've been trying to communicate with it because I really don't want it killed. I just want it freed and taken outside. But I wish you the best. I have a wonderful, uh, I have a wonderful repertoire of stories that of things that happen that I will be sharing with you, and trying to keep these to about 15 minutes. Getting a little better. It's about 18 minutes now, so I am getting a little better. I will see you next week, Friday at 1 o'clock, and really am grateful for your attention and your interest. And if you want to leave me any stories, um, I'm Alice Jones 7 at Verizon.net, and I'm more than happy to uh, to share them with the audience the next time around. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in a while, in a week. Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones. Let's see. I'm going to end this. There we go.